Social enterprise should be business-oriented. To be sustainable, the enterprise has to be profitable while being managed alongside proven business models.
There should be no longer any argument that social enterprise needs to be profitable if it is to succeed in achieving its mission. This simply means the enterprise must earn income more than it would cost to produce its product or service. The key is to use tried and tested business principles in attaining commercial success in social enterprise. Budding social entrepreneurs need to acquire the risk-taking behavior usually associated with business. They need to learn to become successful while being efficient.
What we've heard so far is that when we move to social enterprises as NGOs, we now begin to face the problems of real business. That's number one, no? We begin to get exposed to questions about quality, delivery, price, the fluctuating prices of oil, factors that will affect the viability of business.
We must learn how to understand our own businesses so that we can communicate what we're building to people who can support it with funding. The need to do that is not new. Doing it this way is going to be very different because the disciplines of business are different from typical social development work. Committees, governance boards are not entrepreneurs. The worst thing you can do is to start a social enterprise run by a committee. Businesses need to move very quickly and committees take too long to make decisions. That's why the customer is king. Right? So, is sustainability unlimited funding? Is sustainability even revenue? No. Sustainability is repeat business.
I think the reality is that in the last decade or so, we have seen the transformation of development work, and the old paradigm of free money is now going, if not already gone. On the NGO front, the push for financial sustainability brought about by the decline of donor funds brought a number of NGO leaders to the doorstep of social enterprise. Some came upon the notion of doing business with a conscience as a natural consequence of searching for a space in the market for the poor amidst the tsunami of globalization. Thus, from finding ways for farmers to earn more from agriculture sprang a number of organizations that forayed into the market. It is the convergence of this stream of experience influenced by the growing popularity of other social enterprise models globally that may have infected the imagination of others who further explore the boundaries of how the market can benefit the poor. Thus, in the last 10 years, maybe even more, a number of bold and creative ventures emerged locally under the rubric of social enterprise.
We made a plan about 3-4 years ago that if we're going to teach entrepreneurs, we have to be entrepreneurs. And we began a transition to convert our NGO into a social enterprise. Okay, so of course, as an enterprise now, we charge for all our services. We have to generate an income, and eventually our plan is that we won't need any help anymore. We will be sustaining our own operations and expanding to other entrepreneurs in the Philippines. So here are the lessons we learned from that. They're talking about marketing. They're just talking about selling and collecting money. And it takes a lot to say to them, you have to improve your products. Number 2, you have to ensure that they are ready. You need to make sure that there is an entrepreneur on board in that organization, somebody who can think about business. Key to any enterprise is the entrepreneur involved. A good business model does not ensure success. The theory and practice are different. It's about the market. And the timing is more important than the investment. You've heard it already. Don't give up. Most successful entrepreneurs, you can look at Virgin, you can look at all of these entrepreneurs, and you have found they've failed at least once. And from that experience of failure, you get up and you walk again. Because we exist doing business to address a social problem.
As mainstream businesses, social enterprises will have a better chance of thriving if provided with appropriate support systems or infrastructure. This may include what is called a social enterprise ecosystem, financing institutions, learning and capacity development, policy and legal frameworks.
There's really no question that access to technology and to the necessary infrastructure are important elements that will contribute to the viability of a social enterprise. Infrastructure is vital because in many cases, the poor are likely to be geographically dispersed except for the urban poor concentration in slums. The dispersion of the poor, especially in the rural areas, increases distribution and marketing cost. Weak infrastructure further increases the cost of doing business. And lack of good infrastructure results in geographically fragmented markets and firms that are too small to exploit economies of scale. Access to both infrastructure and technology are highly critical for social enterprises to manage their costs and to keep them competitive. But what can the private sector do to make this available or to complement what's lacking? Some companies and business organizations support social enterprises in terms of business advice, mentoring, access to markets and contacts, and at times facilitating the filling of any gaps in the supply chain. They also share best practices, best business models, and technological know-how in terms of systems and processes. In some particular situations where the company is large enough and the procurement of goods and services from social enterprises is part and parcel of its corporate strategy, then it is but natural for the company to make sure that the necessary infrastructure and technology are provided either directly or indirectly. Since my past experience has been mainly in the production and marketing of agricultural produce, I would like to share some insights on the working relationships with small producers as suppliers of such products through the contract production approach or the direct procurement setup. We view the poor primarily as producers, not as consumers. Raising the income of the poor as producers is the best way to alleviate poverty. The contract production system or direct procurement will help raise the income of the small producers.
Over the last few years, something else developed which brought more impact directly on the lives of our farmers, which is that bridging farmers to the JFC supply chain program. In 2008, JFC launched its program together with CRS, Catholic Relief Services, the National Livelihood Corporation, and the local government of San Jose. We covered 3 barangays, the Kaliwanagan, San Agustin, and Villa Marina. We chose farmers from the 2 barangays, the San Agustin and Kaliwanagan. and total of 30 regular members and 15 associates. We profiled the onion farmers. We chose from the agrarian reform beneficiaries. We conducted series of social preparations with the help of CRS. We organized and developed the Kalasag Farmers Producers Cooperative and assisted in the facilitation of the study tours, market studies like Bounty Fresh Company, Wet Markets, GFC, Agri Nurture Incorporated. This is to familiarize the farmers in what quality of onions they have to produce.
In the fields of San Jose City, Nueva Ecija, the day starts early for Arnold Dizon, one of the many farmers supplying bulb onions to Jollibee Foods Corporation, or JFC. These days, he is finally reaping the fruits of his labor, a huge improvement from the difficult life he had previously led.
Panapanahon lang din ang presyo. Hindi po pare-parehas. Minsan tataas, minsan bababa. Kung nasubukan na namin yung tatanim kami ng produkto, wala namang bumibili.
While farmers like Arnold were hard-pressed for demand for their produce, JFC was in constant need of a reliable supply of quality ingredients. As the corporate social responsibility arm of JFC, Jollibee Foundation bridged the gap to form a new type of partnership. Collaborating with the Catholic Relief Services, or CRS, an international organization that provides technical support to farmers, JFC launched the Bridging Farmers to the JFC Supply Chain program in 2008, which evolved into the Farmer Entrepreneurship Program. CRS, with the support of the local government unit, gathered interested farmers and helped them develop their own enterprise plan using the clustering approach.
Nabuo po yung 30 barangay. Tinanong namin kung willing silang pumasok sa Jollibee. Kung nga po pumayag naman sila lahat. At ang problema nga pong una noon, paano kami papasok, saan kami kukuha ng puhunan?
With the National Livelihood Development Corporation, or NLDC, getting on board the program, financial aid came from an accredited microfinance institution called Alalay sa Kaunlaran Incorporated, or ASCII. The San Jose farmers formalized their cluster as the Kalasag Farmers Producers Cooperative. With training experience and financing support, they proceeded to their first test delivery to JFC, which also became a test of their character.
Hindi po namin nakumpleto yung 60 tons.
Bakit po?
Gawa nga po nung nagkaroon ng problema. Tapos marami pong na-reject. Sinabayan pa po ng ulan. Yan po unang pagsubok namin yun.
Both of us are also learning. So you just keep on trying and trying until you get to the right combination.
Learning from their mistakes, the farmers attacked their second delivery with renewed vigor.
Binigyan po kami ng volume na 197 metric tons. Kung muna kisama nung po panahon, lahat po yun na ibuno namin. Lumampas po kami ng 235 metric tons.
With the farmers' increase in confidence, they approached the Department of Agriculture for post-harvest facilities, which allowed them to meet JFC's demand for increased volume. Soon, Kalasag was also supplying peeled onions, which sold at a higher price and created jobs for other barangay members. Gradually, the farmers' hard work paid off, with their gross income increasing by more than 100%.
Meron din pong iba nakabili ng mga sasakyan at yung ibang mga alas nila natubos na rin nila sa mga pawn shop.
Indeed, change went much deeper for these farmers as they learned the importance of management and professionalism.
Tulad ko sa isang mahirap na magsasaka, ay nasusubukan kong nakikiharap sa mga matataas na tao, nakikihalubilo. Kaya po yung mga apat na ahensya rin, hindi ko naman kilala yung mga yan.
But this success story does not have to end with the Kalasag farmers. To create a much bigger impact, The small farmers need more companies to open their supply chains.
Wala kami sa kinatatayo namin ginhawang ganito kundi dahil sa 4 na ahensya na yan. Sila po ang parang bumuhay sa amin na magpanibagong buhay ka.
The Farmer Entrepreneurship Program, creating a momentum of change, transforming small farmers to become successful entrepreneurs.
This session explored financing windows that are most relevant for social enterprise. Different models such as microfinance, equity investment, supplier and purchase order financing, and venture capital were discussed.
If you will look at the credit programs of the Development Bank of the Philippines, I think Dansopas be there. And in the case of the People's Credit and Finance Corporation, even with the land bank, there are problems in terms of going down the market. It's usually the problem of value chain financing. And this value chain financing has been a problem ever since. Because how can you now tie up the supplier with the market but getting rid of the financing from the traders? That is really a question, and that is really a challenge. Because otherwise, the trader will still be there and will capture the supply chain. Only 33% have access to credit. And here is the problem. Lenders ask for collateral. And they require 240% of the value. If that is the case, there is also a lack of financing for working capital. This is very important for social enterprises. The lack. How can they get financing for working capital? Here you can see a mismatch of the things that many social enterprises, or not maybe, social enterprises or firms have in terms of assets and the requirement for loans. So that social enterprises can have access to capital at lower rates. Increase in business startups and growth of existing business. And of course, for a legal framework for the movable collateral registry system. We will soon be coming up with creating a technical working group to look into this and hopefully we can fast-track legislation in the setting up of the collateral registry. We need, of course, your assistance on this.
And what is the message that I want to convey? Today, there is a diversity of practitioners, of industries, all involved in social enterprise. What does this mean? That SE, or social enterprise, is an idea whose time has come. I also realized, talking to and listening to our speakers this morning, that we really are a global world. You can see that the entire spectrum of needs is more or less covered. Not equally, but there are players in every segment. So that's the second point. There is a funding continuum. And you can also see that most, if not all of these entities that do this funding also have a very strong social responsibility perspective.
Where the poverty is located, that is not where the microfinance interventions are. So you see, microfinance is growing, but mostly in the urban areas. And a social enterprise needs to be able to operate, especially in the last mile. One is, of course, access. And secondly, and this is the one more telling, at the end of the day, the MFI wants to puts its collections in a safe place. Most banks will not admit it, but in case you didn't know, it is a central bank, Banco Central regulation that all banks lend to certain sectors. A full fourth of their portfolio should go to MSMEs. That is the law. And 1/10 of their portfolio should go to agri-agra operations or to companies. Most banks will not admit that they actually do not comply with this requirement, it's not because they're not willing, but they don't have enough clients who are viable, who they feel have sustainable operations. So you don't have to fear going to them and trying to convince them to lend to MSME and Agri. They are required. But what they have to be convinced about is that you are ongoing concern, that the risks of lending to your organization is actually acceptable.
The previous module dealt with the idea of nurturing social entrepreneurs. This module focused on nurturing the enterprise itself. Like any business venture, a social enterprise needs the right mix of infrastructure, financing, and other elements of an effective ecosystem to allow it to flourish.